Hey babes, my name's Hannah.
And my name's Chasity.
Welcome back to Bookish Babes. Today, for our first video that we're filming in 2022, we're going to give you guys our December 2021 wrap up. Little disclaimer, we did attempt to do a tag for December. We'll link the original video. It's from Chandler Ainsley. It was a really cool tag idea. We just both got into like other books that didn't fit in with the template, so she's so excited that I'm finally going to talk about these. So
this is the reason that we didn't get to the tag.
Yes. The first book that I read this month was for that tag, but then I got into, we'll get into it, I got into another series and none of the other books for the tag ended up happening. So, and she's rereading the series that I read.
Which is why the rest of the month just went kaput.
It just was eaten up by the series. So yeah, how many did you read this month?
I don't know. I read a decent amount.
I read 4.
Oh,
so
okay. I guess I'll go first.
Yeah.
I'm gonna put the first 2 together then.
Yeah.
So then I read Cerulean Sins and Incubus Dreams by Laurel K. Hamilton, and that's part of the Anita Blake series. I think those are number 14 and 15.
Jesus Christ, there's so many.
Somewhere in there. I honestly didn't write the numbers down. My bad, guys. I probably should look that up, but Cerulean Sins I gave 5 stars to, and Incubus Dreams I gave 4 stars to. I wasn't quite as into Incubus Dreams as I was with Cerulean Sins, but I'm definitely really into the series, as you all know. I'm like,
you have to be into it to read 14 books.
Really deep dive into it.
Yeah.
I'm just loving everything about this. The character development, the plot lines are getting really good. There's so many new characters being added, and I am just really loving where this is going. I'm sorry, I'm just really excited.
I need to get to the series so I can understand. She can't wait for us to get to
I just want to go.
Alright, so let's move on. Let me get through the book
on.
that you're not excited for me to talk about.
No,
this is a reread. This is the one that I tried to read for that tag. It was something that gave you like Christmas feels. And this is like immediately the first book that I thought of because it takes place in Alaska and there are some scenes, like it's heavily around Christmas time. I love this book. I know I've talked about it before. The first time that I read it, I said it was like one of my favorites, and it really still is. I'm going to give it to her. I'm going to let her borrow it so she can read it.
It's been on my list for a while. It has.
Very heartwarming. It's definitely not like a rom-com though, but I just love the characters and their connection and their story and how they evolve throughout the book. It's honestly, there's great character development, and I think that that's pretty rare in a lot of romances, and it's good. It's really good.
Okay.
Get through your next one.
So the next one that I read was The Hating Game by Sally Thorne. I've heard a lot about The Hating Game, and it's been recommended to me a lot. I gave it 3 stars though. I liked some parts of this book, and I found myself kind of struggling through other parts. Okay. Most of it was just very cliche, honestly. And it wasn't bad. I wasn't surprised by anything. I really didn't feel invested in it too much. I liked the lead male character. I didn't really care for the lead female character, and the story was told from her point of view, so I really had trouble kind of connecting. And then it was an enemies to lovers story, and he was real brooding, and it's called The Hating Game, so they were like battling it out at work, and they were coworkers like like hating each other, and they were fighting for the same position.
Didn't they make that into a movie?
They did.
Okay.
And they were like fighting for the same position, and then in the end it was pretty much like it turned out that he had like a much softer side, and he was really just shy, and he really just,
it's kind of lame.
And I just was like really disappointed by it.
Like all that build up for what?
Yeah, like I don't know. It just didn't hit the spot for me.
No.
It just wasn't my type of thing. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure there's an audience out there. Obviously, there's an audience out there for him to be like
it's a very
softer
rom-com.
Like, oh, he's gonna resign his position, and he really was just in love with her the whole time, and like I really just wanted them to fight it out.
Lame. Let me tell you what's not lame.
I'm so wait. Guys, it's happening, okay? Because
we did a whole video one time.
Been trying for my entire life here.
We made a whole video about like things that we'll never do. Do you remember this video that we made? And I said that I would never read this book. I was like, I just don't think I'll ever get to it.
And I said, listen, you're missing out, sister. You don't know what you're missing. And you were what?
Yeah, and I was missing out.
You were missing out.
I read a quarter of Thorns and Roses.
I win.
This was so not the book that it started out as in the best possible way. I have notes here. Yeah, so I even said it started out as a different book than it ended up being in a good way. There were lots of things, and I don't want to spoil too much for the people who haven't read it, but I might end up spoiling some things already.
Yeah, so if you don't want to
There are a lot of things that I didn't pick up on initially that at the end of the book, and even at the end of the second book in the series, looking back, makes so much more sense. Not that I was confused, but I just didn't think it related to the story at all. Little things that certain characters said, little things that, you know, there was a whole thing with, you know, I don't even want to get into that because I don't want to spoil it for anybody. But there was just a lot that I didn't pick up on. I know. I so badly, once I finish the series, want to go back and reread this first one and see how much, like just how much I didn't pick up on, and how really every little thing that a certain character said meant a lot. And you don't realize it the first time you read it. So if you are living under a rock and you have never been on Book Talk before, ACOTAR is about
this channel, because I talk about it nonstop.
She has talked about it a lot. Is about a human who is taking care of her family after they run into some tragedy. She's hunting and she ends up killing a fairy. It's not as weird as it sounds.
In a wolf form.
In wolf form, correct. She kills it because they need warmth, so she kills it for the fur. And basically there is this deal, I guess. Treaty between, that she's unaware of, because she's young, between the fairy world and the mortal world, that if you kill a fairy, that it's a life for a life, basically. So either they kill you or you go back to the fae world and live as basically their slave, is what she is under the impression she's gonna do. But she actually ends up living as like a guest in this really beautiful court and meeting these like people. Once again, I don't want to spoil it, but she meets a lot of these fae people and kind of realizes that she had the wrong idea of what she thought they were like. Mm-hmm. And there is romance, there is action. It was slow for me in the beginning, the first couple chapters. I remember texting you and I was like, how long are we gonna talk about this damn wolf? Like, I don't want to talk about this shit anymore. But then once I got into it. And this is what kind of spoiled any other books this month for me. Because like this one doesn't seem super long, but the second one that I read, like look how bulky look how bulky these two are. Like these are bulky books. Maybe they don't look like it on camera, but they're long books. So I just didn't get into anything else because this is all I wanted to read.
Valid.
And there's different courts, like it's all beautiful. There's like, you know, she initially goes to the spring court and then she has some interactions with like somebody who used to be part of the autumn court and somebody who's part of the winter court and the night court, and
there's the summer imagery and the dawn and the day. And
they're like, the main characters are great, but like the side characters are even better.
Like, oh, it's such amazing world building.
And she does a great job of building the world as it is now and also going through the history of how it got there.
Yeah.
I think that's really hard to do in a fantasy novel, but she did it really well. It was in very descriptive imagery. It's not difficult to follow. It's a great fantasy for people who want to get into fantasy. Yeah. It's not, because and you even told me this, like if I didn't understand the name of a certain like species, it wasn't going to make or break my experience with the book.
Yeah.
It was good.
Yeah.
It was really good. I rated it 4 out of 5 stars, but spoiler alert, the second one was probably my favorite book of the year, but we'll get into that in a second. You want to do your next one?
Yeah, I mean, my next one was rereading the first one because, you know, she was reading it. Yeah. A few other people I had were finally reading it, and I was like, well, I want to read it. So I'm gonna jump into my next one after that, because I also was re-listening, which is kind of funny because I looked at my Goodreads at the end of the year, and last year this time I was also doing the same thing right around Christmas time as I was re-listening to the A Court of Thorns and Roses series. So apparently that's just a theme with me.
It's a December theme.
You know. Guess so. So the next one that I read was Save Me by Lisa Scalini. I really, really, really enjoyed this one. This was a thriller. It was about a mom who was like working school lunch, like she was being a chaperone at school lunch for her daughter, and her daughter was like being picked on. She has like a scar on her face, and she was having some trouble in school. They had just recently moved there, and she was having some trouble in school, so her mom decided to pick up like one of the lunch mom like shifts to just like kind of be there and kind of observe. And then there was like a fire broke out in the kitchen in the cafeteria, and her daughter happened to be in the bathroom at the time, and she was there with like 2 other girls, and she got the other 2 girls to safety and then went back for her daughter. And then somehow, in some way, one of the other 2 girls that she got to safety ended up back in the building, and she didn't know. So like while she was in the hospital with her daughter, like all this stuff happened, and this other girl was rushed in, and like, and in a nutshell, she ended up being blamed for this other girl's like being in a coma and stuff. And yeah, like the town turned on her, and it was all this just terrible thing. This was like one thing after another. And like the town turned on her, like, how could you leave a child? And because it was the bully who was like,
who was bullying her daughter.
Yeah.
Okay.
Who was in the school still. But it was just it was such a good book, and like just kept me from like page 1.
Yeah.
And was just, it turned out to be like crazy the way like it happened.
Was it a thriller?
Yeah, because it like, she went to like clear her name because obviously she wanted to know how the girl ended up back in the school, because she took her to safety, and she's like, no, that's not what happened. I didn't leave her in the school. And she didn't leave her in the school. She did end up tracking down and finding out how the girl got back in the school. And then she ended up finding out, like uncovering a lot of other stuff, like how the fire started. And the fact that like it wasn't just a random fire. Like, and she uncovered a bunch of other stuff that was like,
like in the process of trying to clear her name, she found out some tea.
She found out a whole lot of tea. A whole lot of tea that like almost got her killed kind of tea. So it was really, really good.
Yeah. Well, my next one, like I said, I kind of spoiled it and said that it's my absolute favorite book that I've read this year. It's the second one in the ACOTAR series. It's A Court of Mist and Fear. I feel like it's like the general consensus that it's the best one in the series. This picks up literally pretty much exactly where the first one leaves off, after like the, you know, all the events at the end of the last book.
It's honestly one of my best, like my favorite books ever.
It's so good. They pick back up with Feyre, dealing, like reeling still with everything that she went through, and same with Tamlin, and obviously this deal that she made with Rhysand, who is the High Lord of the Night Court, that she has to one week out of every month spend in the Night Court with him. Also, you know, she's planning her wedding to Tamlin and having very mixed emotions about everything and trying to process that. And we also go to the Night Court in this book and go to Valaris, which is a city in the Night Court. And we get to meet Rhysand's inner circle. Some of my favorite characters in the whole series.
I want an inner circle.
There is just, I don't think I've quite ever read a book with this much character development.
I know.
Feyre is a completely different person by the end of this book than she was when the first book started. And not just in like the sense that she grows and changes like most people do. I mean that like, if they had changed the name, I would have thought she was a different character. I don't see any similarities between Feyre in the beginning of ACOTAR and Feyre at the end of this book. She deals with so much of trauma from when she was a human, plus now trauma after the end of the first book.
Yeah.
And processing that while simultaneously meeting these new people and having to unlearn so much of what she thought she knew.
Yeah.
about this place, but this has even better imagery than the first one. The way that Valaris is described, we were just talking about how before we filmed this, how other than like Hogwarts, I have never wished that a place was real more than I have with Valaris. Just the way it's described, it's so beautiful, and the people who live there make it even more beautiful. My
favorite fictional place.
Yes.
That's where I want to go.
Other than Lucian, who was in the first book, my all-time favorite characters in the whole series were introduced in this book, just because I love them so much, and I love the love they have for each other and the loyalty that they have for each other, and getting to learn more about Rhysand's backstory and why he presents the way that he is, and you get to learn more about things that we learned about in the first book, but we didn't know the history behind, with Amarantha. It's everything. I'm trying to talk about it without spoiling too much of it for people who haven't read it.
The thing is that you go into this world in the first book, like Farah, pretty much. Like,
you know nothing about this.
You have blinders on, okay? You only know what's being
because we're in
presented.
We're in her head, so we only know what this young girl knows.
So, and then the second one, it's almost like the blinders are being taken off. Like, you get to experience it much more openly
because she's a part of it now.
Yeah.
And so we're no longer experiencing a mortal in the Fey world. Like, she has been in the Fey world. She's experiencing all this now, and it's everything that I didn't know that I was gonna like it as much as I did. I even texted her, I was like, I'm not super excited about the next book, but it's my favorite book that I've read this year. You were right. Is that what you want to hear?
That's exactly what I want to hear. Thank you.
Yeah, and so I did write down, like, the imagery, the fashion, and the family are the major undertones of the second book. All beautiful. So much
fashion.
The fashion.
I want to wear these clothes.
The night court fashion, the way that it's described, and Moore's fashion. Moore's fashion. So much character development, insanely interesting backstories. It takes a skilled writer to take a beloved character from the first book and make you absolutely hate him in the second book. I went from really rooting for him to wishing that he didn't exist in this world anymore. And vice versa. There was a character that I hated from the first book that I ended up loving in the second. So that takes skill.
Check.
That takes skill.
It does.
And it was beautiful.
She completely blindsided me.
But, like, going back, there were signs.
She gave me so many signs, and
we walked face first into the signs, and we still missed them.
She gave me so many signs, and I ignored all of them.
If you haven't read this series, read this series. Anyway.
She did it so good. I mean, it's so good.
Seriously.
This is a series that keeps me, like, guessing. I've read it all, but it doesn't matter. I still can go over it, and I find things in it every single time. Yeah. And I'm like, oh. And then sometimes I'm sitting here going, am I thinking too much into this?
No, you're not. And
you know what I mean?
Here's what I'll say, if you haven't read this series, when you read it, pay a lot of attention to every single interaction that the characters have. Because they will let things slip in their conversations.
Yes.
And at the end, you're going to be like, oh, that's what that meant.
Yeah.
Because you were thinking one thing and it was a completely different thing.
Exactly. I cannot wait for you to reread it because you're going to be texting me.
I'm going to be like, oh, I can't believe I didn't see it.
Because Jess and I still do it.
Yeah.
We're still doing it to this day. I was in this reread right now. I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Hey, did you catch this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wild.
It's a thing. Okay, so the next one that I read was The Proposal by Jasmine Glory. So, The Proposal was a rom-com that I gave 5 stars to. It was really cute, really funny, kind of quirky. I really enjoyed the characters. They were really diverse, kind of fresh. I haven't really read anything like them in a while, and so it drew me in right away, and I really enjoyed it. I kind of screwed up a little. That's actually number 2 in the series.
Oh.
But I don't think you really have to read them in order.
Are they more like companion novels?
Yeah, because I think they're more like companion novels. So I didn't know that. I didn't know they were a part of the series, but I don't think it's going to matter. I have the first one, now, so I'm gonna read it, but I did this as a buddy read with Santana, so I really liked it though. It was good. And then I'm doing another one, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So the following one I did was Survive the Night by Riley Sagar. I've read several of his novels now. I think there's only one of his that I haven't read, and this was by far my favorite.
I'm gonna write it down so I can read it.
I have liked his other ones. I've usually, like, there's been something or another that I've, like, kind of knocked a star off from. But this one was, I think, the first one that I gave 5 stars to. Because I really liked it. I really, really did. I did the audiobook, but I listened to it in 2 days. I flew through it. It was set up kind of like a movie. So, like, the beginning was, like, where they'd set the scene. And then they go into it.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, I thought I had it figured out in the middle, and like it totally took another turn. But the fact that the narrator, this was an unreliable narrator.
Love that.
Got it for me.
Love that.
Like she sees movies in her head.
Okay.
So like she has hallucinations.
So that's why it's kind of laid out like a movie.
Correct.
Okay.
So, but her hallucinations are movies. Like, she sees, like, old-timey movies.
Oh.
So, it was real interesting, but also, like, you had no idea what was really going on. Because you had no idea what she was seeing.
She was unhinged, so it's like, is this really happening?
So...
That's kind of interesting.
It was so good.
Yeah.
And then you would get point of views from other people, like the other person in the car. Mm-hmm. And then you'd be like, oh... she really did see that, but I just thought she was nuts. And it was really good. It really kept me guessing till the end. Yeah. So I really did like that one.
Well, the very last one that I read that I finished, I literally think I finished it on New Year's Eve, was A Court of Wings in Ruin. Did I say that right? A Court of Wings in Ruin.
Yeah.
Why does wings sound so weird to say? So I gave this one 4 stars. Keep in mind, I gave book 1 4 stars, book 2 5 stars. And I'm really picky with my 5 stars.
She's really picky.
Really, really picky. I gave book 2 5 stars.
I just give them freely.
Yeah, you do. And I gave this one 4 stars. I might even... No, I'm sticking with my 4-star rating on this one. It was probably my least favorite that I've read so far, just because I feel like there were moments where it was kind of slow. But... very vital in the series. We get reintroduced to some older characters from the first book in kind of a different form. So I'll say on that. We're gonna film a whole book babble on this series. So I'm trying not to spoil it for people who haven't read it, but like people who have
a book babble on each book.
Seriously. But for people who have read it, we will do a spoiler-filled video. Let's see what I said about it.
I promise you, because I have been waiting.
Yes. There was a ton of build-up to a conflict that I felt like the actual conflict was kind of just glossed over a little bit. The conflict with Highburn.
Really?
Yeah. Because I feel like so much of the book was building up to the conflict, and then it was over in a few chapters.
Oh, I needed it to be over.
Yeah, you were like, let's move on. But my favorite part was the meeting that they had with the other High Lords.
Favorite!
Just because I loved seeing the High Lords from all the courts interact with each other. You don't get some of these characters aren't introduced until this book. And so you didn't know the personalities of some of the High Lords of like the different courts, and it was so funny. Seeing Tamlin and Rhys interact with each other in person.
Asriel.
And Asriel's reaction in that fucking meeting. This was just like some of the characters in their worst forms, but it was the best. Yeah, they did in fact lose that bet. Poor Asriel. But it also got introduced to some like really funny characters. Hellion, the High Lord of the Summer Court, correct? Is he Summer? I think he's Summer.
I think so.
He's
I always get them confused. There's too many of them. And
he really, 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 really wanted this foursome with 3 of the other characters that he's just not gonna get. But it was funny to see him try. He's a great character.
Interesting to see.
He was one of those characters, sort of like Reese, where he presents in a different way than he actually is behind closed doors.
Yeah, he is.
It was cool to see. Sarah J. Maas is just a really great writer. She writes great characters with awesome personalities. And it's really easy to for these characters to kind of come off the page and be real life people that you can picture in your head because of the way that she describes their looks and their personality and their demeanor. It was very enjoyable. Oh, I don't want to say this because it's a spoiler, but there's a win for the LGBTQ plus community in this book.
There is a big win.
That's all I want to say about that book. It was 4 out of 5 stars. It was on the same level as the first for me. It's just, it followed Mist and Fury. If Mist and Fury didn't exist, maybe this book could have been a 5-star, but Mist and Fury does exist.
Thank the Lord for
I know.
Mist and Fury.
Because and I can't rate it the same as I rated Mist and Fury because it wasn't on that level. But very few books are on the level for me. But
Mist and Fury.
Mist and Fury. If anything, just read the first book so that you can get to the second book.
That's what I keep telling people. Like,
Yeah.
just
She did though. When I said I was
did.
going to read it, she was like, okay, you're going to like the first one, but get to the second one. That's what's most important.
Yeah, you cannot rate it until you get to the second one.
Yeah. Yeah.
I tell everyone that. Literally every single person that comes into my store
Like-
buys the first one. I say, okay, you can't.
Just for reference, when I
Decide.
was reading Mist and Fury, like sometimes I would wake up, and I already have to wake up early for work, but I would wake up, I would set my alarm extra early so I could wake up and read some more of this book before I went in. Because like that's how it was to me, and I would stay up late reading it. And I got excited for my commute to work because I got to listen to the audiobook. It was like one of those where like I couldn't wait to get to it. And it's a long book. It still took me almost a week to get through, just because I do work full time, but in all of my free time, that's what I was doing.
Yes.
It was great.
I know.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I actually still have, my sister took like screenshots of me. Like she took pictures and she like was like, she's been reading for 6 hours. Is she alive?
No, I'm not.
No, I'm somewhere else right now, okay?
Yeah.
Alright, so the last two I read in December was Avery by Kat Savage. That's the next one in the Men of Birdseye series. I really, really loved this one. The series is about a tattoo studio and the people that run it. And this one was about a very, I can't remember what exactly she does, but she's a very, very important businesswoman. And she goes with her sister to get tattoos for their, like her sister's getting married and it's the bachelorette party, and they go and get tattoos, and she meets Avery, and like they end up hanging out for the night, you know, like with the guys and the party or whatever, and like they end up hatching this plan because the board is on her back about like having a boyfriend or whatever. And so
it's like a fake dating.
It's a fake dating. Yeah. It was so
I love that
cute.
trope.
I loved it.
Yeah.
I loved it so much, and I loved these two. And it was such a good book, such a good freaking book, and just hit the spot. It was right what I was looking for. So that was a 5-star. I loved every single book in this. This is the third one. I loved the first one was Hawk, second one was Will, and this one was the third one. I loved every single one of this book. I had
very high level. Yeah.
And then the last one I read was Shattered Desires by Victoria Ellis, and that's the second one in the Reckless Desires series. And this one was about a female bassist and her photographer. He was a photographer, and then it's actually like from her, he was like her childhood best friend, teenage best friend, whatever, and then he ends up coming back and like working for the band, and like they have a history together or whatever, and she dated his brother. It's a whole thing. It's just a whole thing.
They have a whole history.
Whole history, and it was a really, really good read. And of course, you know, I loved me some rock star romance, but I loved it even more because it was a chick female rock star.
Yeah, that doesn't happen very often.
It was a chick.
Yeah.
I love it. A female rock star. I love it so much. So, for sure. And that was a 5-star for me. And that's all I read.
That's it.
I'm so fucking excited that she read ACOTAR.
I know, I feel like we didn't give these other books like a good run at it because all we wanted to talk about was ACOTAR. I could talk about it for hours.
We're gonna talk about it.
I tried to not spoil too much. I probably did though, so sorry if you haven't read it. But honestly at this point, like, if you haven't read it, it's kind of a choice. Everybody talks about it. Like, I didn't get mad when people spoiled it for me because I was like, it's been out for years.
Listen, if you're reading, like, if you haven't read it and you're watching this channel, like, it's just, I've talked about it so much.
Yeah.
So.
Not us gaslighting them. Yeah, sorry if I didn't spoil anything, but it's just like, it's all I want to talk about right now.
I mean, I've done
so for my January
Silver Flames.
Did you?
Yeah, I did a Bookish Babes on Silver Flames, so.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, I did it by myself.
Yeah, I probably just didn't watch it, obviously, because I haven't read the book. But,
yeah, so.
But January, you can expect, obviously, the last two in the series I'll have finished, and maybe even you will, maybe. But you're just rereading the second one right now, right?
Yeah.
So you may not have reread both of them by then. I definitely will. I have not picked up the fourth one yet, or like a little novella, whatever you call it. Is it a novella?
Yeah, it is. You're gonna fly through that.
Yeah, for sure. So I'll get through that.
But it'll take you some time. It'll take you some time to get through Silver Flames.
Because it's bulky. I think it's one of the, like, it's got to be the longest one, or at least one of them.
It's like 757.
Yeah, it's a bulky book.
I don't know that because Goodreads just told me that was the longest book I read this year.
Yeah, it's freaking huge. So, but those will be in our January wrap up, and then maybe at the end of January we'll film a book battle.
I'm excited!
We hope that you enjoyed this. Please comment down below and let us know what books you read in December. Also this month you can expect from us our favorite books in all of 2021, so look out for that. Make sure to subscribe, hit that notification bell so you know when we upload, and give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. Like I said, please let us know what you read in December. We're always looking for recommendations, even though we really don't need them. It's one of our toxic traits. We have a very girthy TBR, yet we are always taking other recommendations and skipping over that. We will get through all these books one day. Thank you so much for watching all of our wrap-ups, and thank you so much for making 2021 a great year for us.
Yes.
We had a lot of channel growth in 2021.
We did.
And we have a ton of fun doing this channel, even though it's small. So I just kind of wanted to throw that out there in our first video of 2022, that we just really appreciate everybody who watches these videos.
Yes,
it's kind of a passion project for us. So.
It is.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Yes. And we'll see you guys in our next video. Bye.
Bye.